As always, if you haven't heard before, we're getting kicked back in the room. Hold on, we're going to turn the volume down, but we will record and then post it on the Baton Rouge Audubon Society YouTube channel. So it is my pleasure to introduce both speakers tonight. Karen Westphal was born and raised in Pascagoula on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and spent her childhood in boats exploring creeks, swamps, or barrier islands, and was obsessed with natural science. She came to Louisiana to attend LSU, and her first professional job was as an LSU marine biologist in Lake Pontchartrain. She worked for the Louisiana Geological Survey, Louisiana State University, and the University of New Orleans in a variety of capacities, including field research, aerial imagery surveys, shoreline change analysis, photographic time series, pioneered work on beneficial use of dredge material and coastal vegetation related to elevation and impact of navigation channels, such as the MRGO, Mr. Go, and the surrounding landscape. Through a variety of research grants and professors with LSU UNO for 30 years, she gained expertise with Louisiana coastal habitats and processes, including expertise with coastal vegetation, meiofauna, oil spill impacts, hurricane impacts, and coastal restoration, and as a result became a biogeomorphologist, also known as, or how living things affect land change. Karen joined Audubon in February of 2009 and was elated to apply instead of research coastal sciences. As a coastal scientist, Karen helped design, permit, and supervise the construction of several conservation projects and works with the Rainey Conservation Alliance and Vermilion Parish Police Jury to influence conservation projects in Southwest Louisiana. After working with the previous sanctuary manager, Timmy Vassall, for 10 years, she took up his duties when he had to step down in 2020. Karen has been the manager of the Paul J. Rainey Wildlife Sanctuary for almost 4 years now. And then I will allow Jeffrey Stevens to give his bio when he begins his portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm really excited about doing this. This is kind of like a draft show, so y'all forgive us for all the words and, you know, everything that might happen. So, let me do this. Okay. Come on. It's not going to work on me.
Will it do with the download?
Well, first hitch. It was working a while ago. It's not on the show.
This happens to everybody personally.
Okay.
The first cut is
I don't get it. Oh, there it went.
I guess I was just asleep.
Maybe so. Okay. The Paul J. Rainey Wildlife Sanctuary is the National Audubon Society's oldest and largest sanctuary with 26,000 acres in Southwest Louisiana in Vermilion Parish on the western side of Vermilion Bay, as you can see. It's not the first, as what was said in a lot of the ads and that you have, but it is the oldest. There were several others that are no longer sanctuaries. They either don't exist or they're no longer with Audubon. It stretches from Little Vermilion Bay to the north to the Gulf of Mexico on the south, and it's between the state refuge right there on the right-hand side. Is this going to work? Yeah. Over here, this is a state refuge, and on this side, it's private property all the way to White Lake. So it's a huge area that is more or less protected. They do hunt to the west of us, but for the most part, it's all very pristine, if you want to call it that, habitat. The sanctuary was established in 1924 by a donation from the Rainey family. So Audubon has been a landowner doing on-the-ground conservation for 100 years. This property makes National Audubon Society a coastal Louisiana stakeholder with real interest and concerns over the health and sustainability of the landscape. We work to preserve, enhance, or restore habitat that birds depend on, thereby providing habitat for other wildlife and people as well. The property is primarily intermediate marsh, but includes ponds, Gulf Beach and Bay Shore, bayous, canals, natural ridges like cheniers, and then levees. The area has been a historical stopover for thousands of migratory birds and overwintering birds. As a landowner, we face all the problems and threats in South Louisiana, whether it be shoreline erosion, subsidence, sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, drought, hurricanes, trespassing, and poaching. Audubon also works on a regional scale to actively manage the marsh health. We pool resources and ideas with our neighbors. By protecting our neighbors' property, we protect our own since we're surrounded. This has long been the philosophy of the region, but we've formalized it in 2010 by the formation of the Rainey Conservation Alliance. And in this slide here, you can see our partners include Avery Island, which is the orange blob over here to the right. We've got more McElhenney Estate is kind of the yellow areas over here on our side. This is Rainey, obviously. The green down here, the Sagrera Estates, that's Cheniere Teague. And then this big purple blob is Vermilion Corporation, which is actually the land manager for Exxon. Okay, I gotta say this right here. I put this one up front, just so y'all know. There are no roads to the sanctuary. Public access is strictly limited to protect wildlife and the habitats from disturbance. People come through with their surface drives, people come through with, trying to, anyway, it's just to keep it down and keep, I don't want my ducks flying over where they get shot across the canal. All the property in the region is private other than the state refuge, and all the canals are private. We share canals, we share the cost of maintenance, and we share the liability with our neighbors. So we try to keep other people out. This limits litter, poaching, vandalism, and every boat that comes through erodes our bank lines, and then to protect the interior habitats from those surface drives and whatnot. You must have permission or an invitation to enter the property or the canals, or you will be considered trespassing or a poacher. You don't want either one of those. Okay, now that I'm getting jittery, it's your turn. So how did we get here? Jeff Stevens is going to do the history part. I've been accumulating the history for quite a while, but Jeff had the time and resources and energy to really get into it. So I'm going to let him tell the history part.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Jeff Stevens, as she said. I want to take the opportunity to thank you for having us. We're really excited. As you can tell, we both really love this place and the wildlife there. It means a lot to us to share this, the story with other people. If you can take away one thing from this, I would hope you grow an appreciation for the history, the rich history and the heritage of this place. And maybe it might inspire you to get involved one way or another in some type of capacity with us at the sanctuary. I know you do a lot of volunteer work, so maybe that's something we can do in the future. A little bit about myself. I'm a resident of Vermilion Parish. I grew up there. I went to school at Maurice Elementary and graduated from North Vermilion. Whenever I graduated high school, I tried college for a year, played ball in Mississippi, and it was a real heavy time for my family. My brother was serving in Iraq, so I decided to join up as well. I did 5 years in the Marine Corps. I was a Korean linguist and meteorology, oceanography forecaster. So I worked in the intel community for 5 years. When I got out, I finished up my bachelor's degree at the University of San Diego. That's where I was stationed. And then upon my graduation, I moved home. And for 5 years, I taught middle school science in Vermilion Parish, and I was a varsity athletics coach. I followed the Audubon Society on LinkedIn, and one day I saw a posting for a job in Perry, Louisiana. That's where my grandfather's farm's at. So I was like, a job in Perry, Louisiana for the Audubon Society. And it just so happens that's where the P.O. box is. But the boat launch is about 10 minutes from my family's property. So it's my backyard. I used to launch boats with my grandfather as a kid in the same area. So it's really exciting to be part of the Audubon Society. I've been there for a year. And with that, I've been given some great responsibility and learning more about the place. Karen tasked me with finding out about the managers. That's why I'm giving the history portion. I started with their genealogy and learned a lot about where they were from, and what might have brought them to the position of being a warden or a manager of the sanctuary. And that led me on a really rich trail. I ended up in New York City at the New York Public Library, accessing the National Audubon Society archives for 4 days, and created the Rainey files. So I came back with it was about 2,000 images of documents, all related to the sanctuary. So some of that is added into this presentation. Some of it is left out. Some of it, we haven't even got to it yet, but it's really exciting. And I want to thank you for inviting us to talk about it, and thank you for trusting me to present this part. So although the sanctuary bears Paul J. Rainey's name, it's more of his sister's legacy. Grace is the one who donated the property once she inherited. I made the mistake in the initial intro for the email that it was the first. There were some other sanctuaries in the area, but it is the oldest existing and largest wildlife sanctuary. So Paul and Grace were 2 of 4 siblings. They were the children of Walton Rainey, or Walter Rainey, who made his fortune in coke and steel industry. Paul devoted his time to adventure and global exploration and hunting and wildlife documentaries, and Grace devoted her time to the arts and animal rights. Inheritance early. He was a big game hunter. He went on Arctic expeditions. He drove an ambulance in World War I on the Western Front, and he was a movie producer. So with his fortune, he commissioned ships to carry him to Africa in the Arctic, where he hunted big game. And he later captured wildlife for the Bronx Zoo. I believe he was the first one to, yeah, there it is, the first one to capture the polar bear. So his funded cruise to film his expedition, which led to the wildlife animal documentaries, local film theaters, and eventually the founding of Universal Studios. And there it is again, he drove an ambulance on the Western Front. Oh, and a fun fact, he used his wildlife film crew to spy on the Russians. So wherever he found interest, mostly his interest hunting, as you can see, he tended to buy up a lot of property. And he bought property in Africa for his lion hunts, his famous lion hunts. And he also bought property in northern Mississippi. He bought 11,000 acres. And there he raised and trained fox hunting dogs, hounds. His mansion got too small for him and his hunting party, so he built a hotel and a railroad to get there in Cotton Plant, Mississippi. Man had a lot of money, and he used it and bolstered a lot of local economies wherever he went. In 1919, he went on a snow goose hunt with E.A. McElhenney in southwestern Louisiana, and then he bought 2/3 interest with E.A. McElhenney in 40,000 acres, which is now the region where the sanctuary exists. He had personal lodging constructed and dug canal access. So Paul's sister Grace, the art collector and philanthropist and animal advocate, contributed significantly to various art museums in New York City and Cleveland. And she was a very generous giver to Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the Children's Aid Society, and organization committed to providing seeing eye dogs for the blind. So Paul J. Rainey died in 1923 unexpectedly aboard a ship, and a prior arrangement with E.A. McElhenney was that once his death, when he died, that E.A. McElhenney would take a third of that property, and the other 2/3 would be given to Grace Rainey. So Grace took the 26,000 acres and donated it to the Audubon Society. That was in 1924. She also provided funds for purchase of patrol boats, employment of the warden, erection of signs, miscellaneous expenses, and anything associated with keeping up the property. By doing this, Grace memorialized her brother, the big game hunter, by creating a place where snow geese that he liked to hunt and the wildlife are safe, never be hunted again. It's pretty awesome. The papers were signed June 18th, 1924, which is a big reason why we're doing this. Our 100-year anniversary is this summer. And 10 days after those papers were signed, Audubon staff was on site planting food for ducks. A federal game warden stationed in Abbeville, B.R. Britton, took control until they could select the first manager, which was Dick Gordon. And B.R. Britton, I found some correspondence from him talking about how Mr. Dick Gordon was a big game hunter, and he needed to be the one to use his expertise to take it over. So we're going to get into the managers, a century of Audubon ownership. We've only had 5 managers in 100 years. And those were Dick Gordon, Nick Scheck-Snyder, Lonnie Leger, Timmy Vasson, and now Ms. Karen Westphal, each having their own impact and contributions to the Rainey landscape and the legacy in their own unique way. So this gentleman was very hard to find. I fancy myself a genealogist, and I had a difficult time finding a lot of things about him, partially because of his name. It's very irregular, and it's not on anything but his a couple of documents, like his draft card and his tombstone. I found his tombstone, which has DeForest. So Mr. Gordon was the first warden. He served Rainey for 17 years, from 1924 to 41. He was from Porter County, Indiana, which is a remote northwestern county, Indiana. And when he was young, he took blue stocking hunters out on hunts on his dad's property. And the blue stocking hunters were, from what I understand, elite intellectual women at the time, probably urban dwelling women who would go to the countryside, and as a youth, he would take them on hunts. He was denied entry to service in World War I due to a puncture. It just said puncture. I don't know what that puncture is, but it was severe enough to keep him from duty. And he ended up working for a construction company in Missouri, which brought him to Louisiana. He was a dredge engineer, and he was also, like I said, a market hunter. So he was hired to kill large amounts of geese and other waterfowl for sale to restaurants. And as you may all know, the Migratory Act of 1918 prohibited those sales and really came down on sport hunting. So that market kind of went away for him. And then he became Paul J. Rainey's personal hunting guide. So they hunted at Belle Isle Lake next to where headquarters is, and he was his personal hunting guide. So he took over at 34. He was married to Hilda Gordon. They were very active citizens of Vermilion Parish. I found a lot of really interesting articles from the Abbeville Meridional during those times of, for example, Miss Hilda was, she was spoken of in an article for the TTC, which was the Tired Teachers Club. They had a Tired Teachers Club in Abbeville. And so she was a teacher, and they were very, very good with the children in the community. It was said that they couldn't have children of their own. So all the children in Intercoastal City would come over to their lodge. They would decorate it for Christmas, and they would hand out presents and whatnot. Mr. Gordon, I found some articles that he wrote for the Abbeville Meridional on wildlife conservation. And he visited routinely to the Rotary Club meetings and spoke there on conservation. During the time of Mr. Gordon, the land was continuous. It was broken only by a few small bayous and narrow canals. There were no levees or trees. The only ones that were there were planted next to headquarters. And Belle Isle Lake was the largest water feature in the landscape at 300 acres. There was no intercoastal canal or freshwater bayou channel, which is a big deal. It's a big deal right there. And Vermilion Bay was full of oyster reefs. The Gulf tidal range was the same, but the amount of water moving through the system was minimal, dominated by sheet flow through the marshes, and the tidal range in the marsh was around 6 inches. Conservation measures at the time were focused on planting food for geese and ducks, mostly wild rices, and fire management was introduced to prevent summer fires and promote geese grazing. In 1941, Dick Gordon handed over the keys, if you will, to his chief assistant, Nick Scheck-Snyder. Dick Gordon then went to Sioux Narrows, Ontario, and opened a big game hunting lodge there called the Laughing Water Lodge. It still exists. I called him a bunch of times to ask questions, and they didn't respond. I did talk to one person, and there's a picture of Mr. Dick Gordon next to feeding a white-tailed deer in the lobby of the lodge. So it was really cool to find that out. He returned to Abbeville and passed away at the age of 62 in December of 53. Nick Scheck-Snyder, the second manager, served for 22 years, from 41 to 63, and he was born in Erath, which is just east of Abbeville, in 1900. He was drafted in World War I. Upon his return, he began working as Dick Gordon's chief assistant at the sanctuary. And then in 1941, he volunteered and returned back to service to serve in the U.S. Air Corps as an aviation mechanic during World War II. During that time, there was an old Cajun man, Mr. Joseph Hebert, who took over his duties while he was gone for a little bit. And fun fact, I found his journal that he mailed to headquarters in New York in the archives. So, and you can tell that English was not his first language. So it was really interesting to find that, and how that was his report, was his journal that he sent in. So whenever Nick was done with his military obligations, he returned back to the sanctuary as a manager. In the 1940s, that's whenever oil and gas exploration started on the sanctuary. Very controversial at the time. Even found some correspondence with people with a distaste in their mouth for this happening on a wildlife sanctuary. But nonetheless, it happened, and it had its benefits as well. Audubon shared the proceeds, which went to improvements to maintenance of the present refuge, and to provide acquisition improvements and maintenance of other refuges to be named after her brother as well. Some existing canals were widened and additional access canals were excavated. Nick also helped with capturing the last wild whooping crane in Louisiana. He actually jumped from a helicopter and captured it. Very interesting story. Karen knows a lot about it. They actually took that whooping crane, drove it overnight to Texas, and released it in the wild to be with other whooping cranes. So Nick was the one who did that. He was also responsible for the construction of the second house, the manager's house, south of the original camp. And if you could see, that's it on the top of the screen. That's the manager's house. He also was responsible for bringing electricity to the sanctuary during his tenure. Fur trapping was initiated at the request of the state as a conservation measure to reduce marsh eatouts and muskrats. Trapping canals were dug and for P-row access, and fur trapping ceased when the market plummeted in the 1980s. Early projects from Nick included ditching weirs, plugs, and flumes, which increased water flow and drainage, and to create more open water habitat for waterfowl. And then some property owners actually used dynamite to create duck ponds. But here's some pictures of them pulling a plow to create these small channels or canals, if you will, trapping canals, Trinassus. The third manager, Mr. Lonnie Leger, served for 42 years. He was manager from 63 to 2005. He grew up in the marshes and communities near the sanctuary and attended Mount Carmel, which is a private school in Abbeville. And he was a member of the Iron Dozen football team. Fun fact, I was a teacher at this school, and I was a special teams coordinator for the football team. So I kind of got a little connection with Mr. Leger, even though I never met him. He was an avid hunter and trapper and a fisherman, and he developed an understanding of marsh management and conservation by working with his dad in the McIlhenny Marsh from an early age. So he's the Legers, the entire family lived out there. The father was a McIlhenny manager, so the estate next to the sanctuary. And once he took over, his brother was a manager for the McIlhenny estate, correct, Mr. Pete? I might have that wrong. Yeah, and the assistant there. So it was a family effort with the Legers, and as 4 generations, they take care of the McIlhenny estate. But for 42 years, he took care of the sanctuary. It was, so the Iron Dozen was a football team that went undefeated. They were the only teams. Yeah, it was in that community. He's well known in the community for that. Yes, ma'am. So Lonnie was a true conservationist and was responsible for many of the early water management structures and marsh enhancement projects at the sanctuary. Oil and gas exploration continued during Lonnie's time and then seized in '99 by Audubon President Flicker. And this was to oppose the pipeline construction in Alaska at the time. Oil and gas activity provided the national organization with needed funding, millions per year, and the presence of oil and gas equipment provided Rainey with construction of many carefully considered canals, called location canals, and a lot of our water structures were there because of the oil and gas activity. And during this time, $500,000 was added to the endowment. The marsh substrate during Lonnie's time was pretty much as similar as it was in the beginning. It was continuous, firm, thick, and high, dominated marsh hay. The new canals and levees isolated areas and could be used for controlled cattle pasture with no need for fencing. And Audubon leased grazing areas until the 1970s. The freshwater bayou navigation canal was also dug out during his time. This was in the early 60s, and dredging in Vermilion Bay began to increase the water flow through Southwest Pass. So Lonnie recognized this, and he knew the dangers that would result in increased tidal ranges and salinity. Therefore, he put in first weirs to moderate these damages. He also plugged up location canals to create duck ponds. These are some of my favorite places to visit on the sanctuary. It's really nice. I'm glad he thought of that. Lonnie's Island is directly behind the headquarters. They put that there in '67. They built it with shell for lease turns, and him and his assistant banded more lease turns that season than anyone has since. Sometimes 200 to 500 in a season. Now it's a roosting area for egrets. So in the evening, it's just a white island because all the egrets are in the tree. It's really beautiful. He captured live alligators on the sanctuary in experimental harvest. This was during the time alligators being on the endangered species list. So they would do experimental harvest at the sanctuary, and they would send these alligators to other parts of the country, mostly to the east, to repopulate areas with alligators. So Lonnie was instrumental in this. He also was the first to allow for the alligator farms to harvest eggs, which still continues today. He was very active as an advocate for birds, and he went to U.S. Congress at least once to testify on behalf of wildlife. He retired at the sanctuary following Hurricane.
That was the guy. He's from Arrested Development too. Played one of the brothers.
So he retired after devastation of Hurricane Rita in 2005, and which destroyed headquarters. The original lodge home was lost, and it's where the Rainey house now stands, our new home. Here's the old manager's house. It's a house that I'm currently bringing back to life. I stay in there, and whenever I spend the night, it's a great place, rich history. I can feel the managers there. The next manager, the fourth Rainey warden, was Mr. Timmy James Vansall. He served 15 years, and he was born in Abbeville and raised in Erath. He is a grandson of cattle ranchers, and his maternal grandparents ran a furniture store, and he was really proud of his heritage and where he came from, his Cajun heritage. So he started coming to Rainey as a young adult, trapping. He was a trapper, and he also studied at what was then USL in land management, and worked as a production operator in the oil field. But the marsh was where his love was, so he was hired in '96 as an assistant. He took over as senior sanctuary manager in 2005, and he rebuilt. He rebuilt the manager's house, and then he had to rebuild the manager's house again in 2008 after Hurricane Ike. But as you can see, here's Timmy here. He lived out there. He was a very, very avid fisherman, and he loved the outdoors. Timmy inherited a vastly different landscape. Hurricane Rita and Ike severely damaged the marshes of Rainey, removing hundreds of acres and increasing the tidal prism to disastrous proportions. You can see right here in the two images, 2004, it's a lot more healthy than 2008. There's a lot of flushing. The storm surge ripped up marsh roots, leaving shallow open waters, which were never able to recolonize. The remaining marsh was subject to increased erosion from wind-induced waves, and the larval tidal prism and breaches caused more and more flushing. These are some of the innovative conservation projects that Mr. Tim was responsible for: terracing prior to hurricanes, marsh restoration by small dredge, Christian marsh terracing design on McElhenney property. And he worked for 20 years to get water control on Tom's Bayou, which is a meandering bayou in the southeastern portion of the sanctuary. It's very important for the water flow. So we finally got water control structures there, thanks to him. And he was the creator of the idea for the Rainey Conservation Alliance, bringing all the property owners in the area to pool their resources. He recognized the value of new tools and was not afraid to experiment with the new ideas. So he came up with small dredge ideas, other dredging activities. He added new features to the Rainey landscape, such as weirs, plugs, flumes, segmented breakwaters, linear breakwaters, oyster rings, and vegetative plantings. And here's some images of some of these projects. A big part of my job is to patrol the area, go around and keep maintenance to these water control structures in these areas. Our fifth manager and current manager, Miss Karen A. Westphal. You guys got a lot of this in the introduction bio, but she's from Pascagoula, Mississippi, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and she's obsessed with natural science. She's a coastal scientist, a biogeomorphologist. She's done that for 30 years and loves what she does. Karen joined Audubon in 2009 as part of a science field office, where she was finally able to apply the sciences she researched for so many years. She started work on a dredge project with Timmy in 2010. They built workshops and an apartment that were destroyed from 2020 hurricane, from the 2020 hurricane season. She also worked with Timmy to redesign and supervise the completion of our new Rainey house, a newer Rainey house. Past projects, Karen has helped design and permit, supervise construction of Deep Lake Marsh restoration by small dredge, the Deep Lake hydrological restoration, and Deep Lake tall terraces. Some of them that are being planned are currently in the works is the Belle Isle Terrace permitting, which she's working on. The Bay Coast hydrologic restoration, which is still in the planning, and the Greater Bob Gill hydrologic restoration, which is taking off here very soon. And Karen took over in 2020 when Timmy had to step down. and she is an active member of the Rainey Conservation Alliance. That's it from my portion. We're going to flip back to Karen. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He did a good job on all those things I added to his slides. Can't see the title, but our current management practices include a lot of what used to be done, but there's a lot of questions about marsh fires, so I'm gonna try to run through that a little bit. We do prescribe marsh fires. Burning the overburden of intermediate marshes promotes thicker stem density and root growth. It exposes that overburden so it can, more sunlight and everything. It doesn't work in salt marshes as well, but intermediate marshes respond very well to this. And if you keep the roots healthy, then the roots can actually expand the substrate, capture more sediment, and actually keep up with sea level rise if they've got everything they need. So the other thing about it is that we burn in the winter, and that way when you have summer lightning fires, you protect all the breeding birds and everything that's going on at that time. And the picture down here at the lower right, you can see the difference between when you burn a marsh and when you don't burn a marsh, as to the productivity that you can actually see how green this is, as opposed to this marsh over here that's struggling to come up through the old. So we don't burn everything. We like to give places for the wildlife to go. So we burn a third of the sanctuary roughly. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, following something like a 2 to 5 year rotation, except right around the house because I want a fire break. So at the first rain, when you burn like this, everything goes to ash. And with the first rain, all that ash is put back into the system right away as fertilizer. It goes right down instead of building up and waiting for things to rot and all that. You get the fertilizing effect almost immediately. So more carbon is actually sequestered than released when the marsh can grow back healthier, stronger, denser. So the water control structures, I can't see my title, so I can't see what it's supposed to be. But we do a lot of we're in the areas where we have water control. We talked about the difference in the tidal range, and it's very important in these places to try to slow the water movement down. We don't want to stop it, but we need to slow it down, and we need to moderate those huge tidal ranges. So we've got a couple of areas where we can control it pretty well with these structures, and this is one side of it. There's two sides. On the inside, we have logs that we can put in that we can maintain the water level. And that way it can't dry out completely. We can hold in rainwater and when we need to, and that sort of thing. And on the outside, we have flap gates that we can raise and lower or open and close, depending upon what kind of structure it is. But that when you close it off, that keeps the incoming water, like too much salinity or pollution maybe, or something like that, to keep it from getting in. Or if we've got all kinds of invasives or something come in, and we can shut it off to keep it from going into that inner marsh. So we have a schedule, and we also watch all the conditions in order to operate it appropriately to keep that managed marsh in good condition. This particular area is like 4,000 acres is what you think about it, 4,000 acres we've got water control over. And so we're trying to help the health of the marsh. This is another management that's up and coming. The pig population has exploded in the last 10 years. There were pigs that were, there's a Cheniere community, if any of y'all know the area, down at the south end of the property, and they had communities there. They had families, they had farms, and a lot of their domestic pigs would get loose. And then someone, I don't know where they came from, those European pigs, those ones with the big ridgebacks, they're ugly. They brought those in for hunting fun, and they're all over now, and they're interbreeding. So if you look at this picture, they're little striped pigs over here on the corner. That's a European genetics. And here you've got a little spotted pig, and that's a domestic pig, and that's all in the same litter. And you see how many piglets, and they can do this like what, every 9 months, 6 months, something like that. We just had an aerial pig hunt that took out 500 pigs this week. and they want to come back because he said they didn't get them all. We also have feral cattle. I'm sorry, we also have feral cattle. Now think of the word I just said, feral cattle. They've been there for 30, 40 years. It was a farming community. They had cattle, hurricanes come through, they get out of the fences. You cannot catch these things. And they tried to round them up just recently. This past month, they tried to round up some. There's like 35, 40 of them. They could only catch 7 because they don't act like regular cattle. You come after them and they just disperse like cats. You can't, and as big as they are, you can't find them. They disappear. So even that's an issue, but luckily they stay mostly at the coastal rim, other than the ones that floated in during the hurricanes in 2020. And so I think I have about 6 cattle up in the interior of Rainey right now, and they don't go back because they won't get in the canals where the alligators are. So they stay in their little, well, I say little, 4,000, 6,000 acre pasture that they have out there. So, to go back, this is leading into our projects that we do. Originally, the area was fresh marsh. That's the marsh that was laid down, the substrate that was laid down, high organic substrates dominated by this slow sheet flow with a 6-inch tidal range. Dramatic changes in the hydrology with that freshwater bayou canal that was cut north-south through that east-west system of ridges, cut right through it, allowing all that. Now we've got a greater tidal range and it's bringing in salt. When you bring in salt, it breaks down the organic substrate, loosens up the root base. And then with all that high water moving through, when you've got 4 feet of water trying to move through areas, it's sucking all that stuff out with it. So again, that's why we're trying to control the flow. I've seen tides now like 4 feet a day. I mean, seriously. It'll be high in the morning and my boat will be on the mud in the afternoon. So that was the problem. Now to address it with our conservation problems, we kind of deal with, there's the 3 main ideas is managing water flow. I keep talking about that. Trying to increase or retain sediment and reducing erosion. And all of these things can kind of work together. So you reduce the tidal prism by putting something to, the tidal prism is like just the amount of water. Well, in some cases it's 4 feet, but just the amount of water that wants to leave when the tide goes up and down. So if you can break that up, then there's less water trying to go through that little canal. That's going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the other thing is, you know, if you can slow it down, you can get the sediment to drop out instead of to leave. And then to reducing the erosion, that keeps your sediment and then gives you something to build on. So our projects kind of work with one of these. This one, Deep Lake Water Management Unit, was one of our big projects because we did all 3 legs of the stool in this one unit. So we did the small dredge, which is up here in this corner, where we filled an area. So we took out the water and we added dirt. And then we have tall terraces, or all these little white strips. And then the hydrologic restoration are going to be these red ones. These are actual structures, and these with the orange triangles, diamonds are plugs. So the small dredge filled, and I could talk a day on this because I mean, there's a lot to each one of these slides. So I'll try to keep it brief. But we took this 16 acre area, and we used a small dredge to pump mud out of this canal that you see right here. And we just pumped it over the levee into this area, filled it up, and didn't do any plantings, nothing. Let the alligators open the waterways, did what it wants. But when you put the mud in there, we didn't do any kind of containment. We used the marshes containment, and that way the material flowed into all the holes and all the little crevices in that marsh, under the marsh, over the marsh. And you can see how solid that marsh is down at the bottom down here. How nice and solid all of that is. It's a really nice result. The terraces that I showed you, all those little white strips, we did 14 of them. Each one is about 1 acre. So each one took up 1 acre of that tidal prism. plus each one blocked wind. Each one blocked water flow. Each one provided 3D habitat above. And it also created ditches where we borrowed the material, because to make them, you just scooped up the mud and stacked it up. So the alligators now could actually sink under the water instead of being laying on top of the mud flats. We did a number of things with this. Some of you did our habitat enhancement. Yeah. It was a nice way of saying, here you go, have your bucket of gravel, right?
It was worth it. We got to go to the Rainey conservation area.
It was an awesome effort. We moved all together that season, we moved 13 tons of gravel. And that's what you kind of see on the top of this island here.
How did the nesting work?
It was not what we had hoped. We got a lot. We didn't get any lease turns because we were a little too late getting it completed. And but we did have a lot of common nighthawks and black-necked stilts and things of that nature that settled in. You know, we had a couple of other things that we picked up. But this area is so productive, it wanted to grow. It was really hard to keep it clear. And so this year, without money for volunteers, I didn't go back. It's grown up. So the best way to fix it would be to put more on top, and that takes money and something down the road. One good point about this though is, I mean, it had potential, and while we did it was the first year we created it, that summer, the summer, it was still just a big mud lump, and the lease turns raised chicks on it. And 4 months after the terraces were completed, we had Hurricane Barry that came through with a 4 foot storm surge, and our chicks survived, and all the ones on the Gulf Coast got wiped out. So that was proof of concept, was to build it high, get the birds to come, and you can at least save some of them. So this, the hydrologic was the other part of this 3-pronged stool. And there's you can see the water control structure at the bottom with the flaps on the outside. This is where's my cursor? The canal is here, so the flap gates are right here, and the log box is back here. And these arrows are pointing to the terraces. And this corner over here is where the dredge effort was. So that's all 3 of the elements where you can see them. It's a much bigger area than that. It goes way back there. But the results for the water, it went from muddy to this kind of thing. And we actually got the aquatics growing again, because we finally got control of that flushing. It slowed it down enough that the SAVs could actually root and not get stripped out. And it started collecting, it dropped out all of the sediment with all that aquatic. And when you would ride up in there, you'd have fish and shrimp, and you could see them, which was like here in Louisiana, you could see them. So that, to me, it was like the best thing ever was that picture right there. It was like all that work. Yes, it works. So that was a proof of idea, and we want to do it other places. We also did a lot of bird monitoring. And we hope to have our own Motus tower soon. We're getting one. We did green heron work with Katie. We're always keeping track of the lease turns. Piping, we have piping plovers on our beach at 100 one year. We have Wilson's plovers, and then that arrow down here, the little yellow arrow is actually pointing to a chick. Hard to see. And we kept track of common nighthawks, and we have had black rail in the sanctuary area. And the bucket house on the right is my design. I got 4 of them up this year. I also keep an inventory of plants and other wildlife as well. A lot of those are non-naturalist, just because that's what I do. So I've got a running total. I'm always adding to it. We've had various grants, and Koipu funded a bunch of bird activity. We tried to do jungle gardens nesting platform, but our money, I was thinking when we were doing this, we're gonna have 100 feet of platform like jungle gardens, and I got that. So if y'all want to donate to a cause, I need more money to make more of those. This is I've got a trail cam sitting on it and I get so many birds playing around on that thing. And I mean, I get pairs of anhingos. I get all kinds I got pairs of great horned owls, a lot of things showing interest, but it's so tiny that I just don't think that they're gonna take it. We also got our, this was a derelict structure for a long time, but if you ever get to come on a tour, I will take you to this platform because when you get up on it, you can see the marsh in all its glory. It's really awesome up there. And that's at the very south end of our property. So there were, we did some osprey nest poles. Nothing's taken that yet. They, everybody likes to sit on it, but nobody wants to nest on it. And then we did some monitoring and that paid, Poipu also paid for y'all the volunteer work that we did with the habitat enhancement. Now our new project's coming up. This one, the problem here, the Belle Ile terraces, you can see at the bottom of the picture, this is where I stay in that house right there at the bottom. So this is Belle Ile Lake, which was 300 acres and it used to be relatively deep and various things of, they cut this channel to maintain a channel through the lake. They put terracing and immediately filled up with mud, which was awesome. This is the bird island down here at the bottom that's now all trees. And what I want you to look at is this little tiny thin line right here. They had put terraces, hurricanes came through and wiped out this whole area. We have boats that come down this way. We've got all the eastern wind that comes. So we've got wake on one side and waves on the other, hitting that little tiny thin strip of land. And if that breaks through, it's into this marsh next. There's not much of a levee here. You don't see any trees. And if that comes across, then here goes that marsh. So we have a project to fix that. And this is the concept. I've got a permit going in now. The orange lines are going to be tall terraces. It'll be easier to get to where I can actually bring in, you know, like marsh buggies to actually put the gravel instead of having my people carry buckets. And then the whole idea is to armor, is to armor the white lines, to put riprap on the outside to protect against boat wakes. The terracing will protect against the wind waves. And then we're going to add material on top to fortify that ridge to try to protect that whole area. So that permit is actually in the system right now. Okay, this is another one of our up and coming projects. We call it our Bay Coast because it's our coast that's on the bay. We had a couple of problems. There was a plug in this where this red dot is. It plugged that location canal, but a gator decided to cut through it. And we blocked that gator. We filled it in. We put up fences. We put up plywood. We did everything we could. And that big old gator just kept knocking it down. So when he knocked that down, this structure over here, over on the state refuge, is a derelict weir. And it's no longer blocking anything. So we have a cross current coming across this way. And this marsh is now in danger. So the whole idea is to get another, and this one got damaged in the hurricanes. So it's to get, you know, we want to get a handle on this one like we did Deep Lake right here. We want to get a handle on this and control that water, keep this from sucking out our marsh. So that's what that is. And then this one we actually got money to work on this one. This is a bigger area. You see the yellow, keep hitting the wrong button. There's this yellow area is what I'm going to be talking about right now. This is the west side of our property. We call it the Greater Bob Gill because one area is Bob Gill, and we want to do the McElhenney property on one side, and we want to go down to the south. And this is to try to do the same thing as we did in Deep Lake with terracing, marsh creation, water control. And if we can get that, we create like a resilient corridor where we've worked this area. McElhenney has done a Quipper project up here. We've got Christian Marsh right here. It's got some plans, and then this core here. So if we get this area fortified, that helps everything else that we're going to build on to the east and west. This one's almost a Quipper side project. So we do go for Quipper money. And again, we make seafood for everybody else. And we also are storm protection for everybody inland of us. So this one, you can see this is where there was a breach in this location canal right here, and all of this marsh now is in danger. You can see it's all being sucked out. And this was just part of the plan that I was fiddling with. We have money to get an actual engineering company to help us plan what to do. So that's basically what's up and coming. Oh, I did that too fast. This is 1998, the headquarters. And you can see the line of buildings, and our current is almost the same thing. It's just, it's in a little bit different shape with different houses and structures as things disappeared. Oh. So for more information or volunteer, you can contact me. And if you'd like to donate to Audubon, there's a link. And oh wow, we did it right in an hour. Yes. Does anybody want to know? Because I could talk forever. You get me started. We'll be here all night.
Karen, do you want to let them know on Zoom they can either use their mic or put questions in the chat?
If you're on Zoom, you can put questions on the chat,
Or they can use their,
or you can use your mic and maybe I'll hear you.
I'll try it. Anyone?
Yeah, hindsight's great, and hurricane is very destructive, but I was wondering, the area's been managed for a long time. Is there anything that the earlier management could have done to help it out, more recently or after the hurricanes, or did they do what they did, and they really weren't focused on this kind of impact?
Okay, for you guys online, the question was, could earlier managers have done anything to help prevent some of the damages from hurricanes?
Yeah.
And each time period had different conditions that they had to adjust to. The early managers had hurricanes, but their marsh conditions, the sea level rise, substance go than it is for what we had to handle now. And if you do look at the whole area, Rainey is actually, the sanctuary is actually in better shape than the state refuge next to it. We're actually better than some of our neighbors. Some of that has to do with some of the geology, but some of it is that Audubon is actively managed, and some of the other neighbors half manage. Their goals are different than ours. A lot of them are managing for, a lot of our neighbors are managing for, what you want to call it, for hunting and for, the alligators. They do, they have alligator seasons. They want to make money. And we try to manage for habitat health as best we can with what we can. Any other questions?
Let's talk about engineering firms. So with each project, you do have people coming in, helping you design what to do. I mean, that boggles my mind, trying to figure out where you can put this instead of the other.
Well, the projects that I've been involved in, when I came on, I can do permitting and such for things. I can design projects that are dirt and water and wind. I'm a coastal scientist, and that's what I do. So I designed everything for the terraces, and I designed for the dredge. But when it comes to water control structures, I can't design those. And I can't do a lot of I don't have the facility to do the geotech work, and I don't have the facility for doing modeling, but I know how to move, dirt and water.
Pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's very cool. It's amazing. And you're the first woman to have made it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And how many people actually work there?
there's 2 of us now.
And could you tell us more about
volunteer opportunities? I know I had gotten an email about the gravel movement and I jumped on that, but I haven't seen anything since.
The question was about volunteer work. Right now, we haven't had a lot that we could have volunteers do. There's a lot that we're doing, but how to plan to bring in a crowd to help us with it is difficult sometimes. I'm hoping when we get our next terraces out, we're gonna be doing plantings. You know, that sort of thing. So when, you know, there are things in the area. I mean, hey, if you want to help us come cut stuff on a trail or, you know, whatever. I mean, we're doing all kinds of stuff all the time. If you just want to hang out and help us with whatever we're doing, you know, we could probably work something out. We did have mosquitoes very densely all winter. I saw my first greenhead and my first yellow fly this week, so they're a month early. It gets hot. You know, it's not always great timing. So some of the best volunteer times are in the spring, or in the late fall, early winter, when it's a little bit better conditions.
And you're always doing something that somebody, let's just say there was people that would come out there, they like work on trails or do something. Just check with you. You know, what is it?
More the merrier.
I'm sorry, you guys online missed the byplay on that one, because it was asking if people could come out for just whatever we're doing.
Hurricanes are coming. I'm assuming you just sort of pack up and pray.
Yeah, when hurricanes are coming, we do have to evacuate anything. Well, we have to move anything that could wash away, blow away, tie it down, do something with it. We take all of our vehicles away. This will be the first season that we actually can leave our vehicles, and we'll just have to move our boats. Hopefully the new workshop will not go anywhere. So that's where all of our vehicles are going to go, instead of me having to move all of them by boat, because everything we move out has to go on a boat. Yeah, and that's when I could really use volunteers. So if there's a hurricane coming, y'all let me know if you want to come help move stuff, because that's when we move stuff. Everything that we store under the house has got to be moved up. Everything, you know, just, we have to clear out everything if we don't want to lose it.
And then when you want to see what happens to your drones, protect on the, you know, all the acreage.
Yes, the question was, do I use drones? Yes, I have a drone. I use a drone for everything. I throw a drone after I burn a marsh. I'll throw a drone up to go see where it burned and how well it burned. If we have any kind of damage at all, I send a drone up. If when we have the alligator egg collection, I follow all the airboats with the drone. I do mapping missions of our conservation projects. Every 3 months, I throw the drone up and do mapping missions so that I can compare before, after, and, you know, 5 years down the road. Yeah.
Do you change anything with the water control structure when the storm comes?
Do I change anything with the water control structures with a storm? Yes. There'd be a couple of, it depends on a variety of things. A lot of times I would just open everything up so that it won't tear up my structure. You know, and then after the storm, I would operate it in such a way either to flush the salt out or, you know, some such things that.
And is the sanctuary open by arrangement for tours by, say, members of LOS or Battery Audubon? How does that work?
The question was, is it open for tours? Are we open for tours? We're working that out, I guess you'd say. It cost Audubon time and money to have tours come out. So we need to get some sort of, I don't want to exactly make it sound like we need to get benefit exactly, but, you know, some sort of good reason. Yeah, and it doesn't need to be a cost. It can be either PR, it can be, maybe you can do help with biological assessment, identifying birds. I mean, there's any number of things that we can work out for tours. We bring 4-H groups out and we do conservation education. So, you know, I've brought some, LSU, were they teachers? I can't remember if they were. I can't remember who they were, but it was from LSU. Yeah, it was a group of teachers. It was.
Been watching the
it
Audubon
was bringing
meeting. They had
Science
an
teachers out.
excellent
And
presentation.
I've got a
That's
link
the
with LSU
National
for some
Wildlife
environmental
Area, yeah.
sciences. They'll bring classes out. Mark Shirley brings people out. So, you know, and
Sure, what is
I'm also
that?
open to the idea of research. So I know you guys aren't researchers, but I do, you know, I do suggest that any kind of research, because if you look at a map of data, Rainey as a whole, there's not much there because you can't get there. So I try to facilitate research in whatever way we can. We had some people doing some work on terraces and model ducks. And well, the black rail work, that even our own work doesn't happen out there because it's just so hard to do. So it's, you know, yeah, I'm trying, we're trying, and we would like to facilitate it. So yeah, you know, we can talk about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I need to read?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jane, if you want to stop recording, I'm gonna shut it down on this side. Thank you, guys.